Imagine walking into a town where, unbeknownst to you, an unspoken rule dictates who can walk its streets safely after sunset. This isn't the introduction to a dystopian novel, but a dark chapter in America's history, the era of sundown towns. Sundown towns epitomize America's silent segregation practice, systematically excluding African Americans and at times other minorities from living within their borders through ordinances, signs, and the menacing threat of violence. This practice wasn't confined to the Jim Crow South. It spread its tendrils into nearly every state, painting a picture of widespread racial segregation and discrimination that stretched far beyond what many of us learned in history class. The origins of sundown towns can be traced back to the late 19th century, at a time when emancipated African Americans were seeking opportunities in a post-Civil War America. However, as Black Americans migrated, many communities erected barriers, both legal and social, to maintain racial homogeneity. By the early 20th century, sundown towns became a systematic approach to racial exclusion, enforcing their bigotry with signs that infamously read, "Don't let the sun set on you here. Slur." Imagine the fear those signs instilled in the hearts of Black travelers, knowing that staying beyond sunset could cost them their dignity, freedom, or even their lives. This was the daily reality for countless individuals. Towns like Hawthorne, California, and Levittown, Pennsylvania, were notable examples, though they were part of a much wider network spread across the country. The existence of sundown towns was a poorly kept secret, their presence an open declaration of racial prejudice. The impact of sundown towns went far beyond their geographical boundaries. They contributed to the shaping of American suburbs, fostering racial segregation that has lasting effects to this day. The policies and attitudes that built these towns played a significant role in the creation of racial ghettos, affecting housing equity, education quality, and employment opportunities for generations of African Americans. The effects of this segregation ripple through the nation's consciousness, manifesting in the systemic inequalities that plague America. Historians estimate that by 1970, there were over 10,000 sundown towns across the United States. The silent segregation practice wasn't purely Southern, but was a national issue, with towns in states like Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio leading the way in enforcing these exclusionary practices. The widespread nature of sundown towns challenges the misconception that racial segregation was a strictly Southern issue, revealing a more uncomfortable truth about American history. The discovery and acknowledgement of sundown towns have been a painful process. Many communities prefer to forget this part of their history, but silence only perpetuates the injustices of the past. Recognizing and addressing the legacy of sundown towns is essential in the fight for racial equality. It's a matter of acknowledging the systemic barriers that were put in place to limit the freedoms of an entire segment of the American population, and understanding how these historical injustices shape our society today. Efforts to confront this issue have seen towns taking steps to reconcile with their past, from issuing formal apologies to initiating discussions on race and inclusivity. Yet, the journey towards healing is long, and it begins with education. By bringing the history of sundown towns into the light, we challenge the silence that has kept their legacy alive. Imagine a future where the darkness of sundown towns is finally overcome by the light of understanding and acceptance. It's more than just a dream. It's a possibility that starts with acknowledging the past, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. The story of sundown towns is a sobering reminder of the depth of racial segregation in America, but it also offers a path forward, a chance to confront our history, learn from it, and build a more equitable society. As we reflect on the legacy of sundown towns, we're reminded of the power of fear and the resilience of those who faced it. The fight against racial segregation and discrimination is far from over, but by shining a light on these dark chapters of our history, we take a crucial step towards justice and equality. Sundown towns are more than a bleak part of America's past. They're a call to action, a reminder of the work that still needs to be done in dismantling the barriers of racial prejudice that divide us. Let this be the generation that refuses to let the sun set on justice, equality, and the shared promise of a better future for all, regardless of the color of their skin. Together, we can ensure that the silent segregation of sundown towns becomes a thing of the past, a lesson learned in the pursuit of a more inclusive America.